At my mother's funeral, a stranger stepped up to her casket, touched the back of her hand like he owned grief, and said, "Rest easy, Lark." I was in uniform, my service weapon holstered under a black blazer. The wrong name hissed through that church like a match, and everything I thought I knew about the woman who raised me went up in smoke. Before we get into the case file, just a quick note. If stories of hidden motives, dead ends, and unexpected turns are your thing, make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell so the next mystery finds you first. Now, let's open the file. When beloved retired schoolteacher Alma Ward dies in Bayard, Mississippi, her son Sergeant Langston Ward expects casseroles, hymns, and the slow relief of good memories. Instead, a funeral interloper calls Alma by another name, triggering a cascade of secrets, a hidden bank key, old photos from New Orleans, and hints that Alma once belonged to a crime syndicate. As Lang digs, he collides with stonewalled records, ghosted federal case numbers, and local power brokers who want the past to stay buried. Torn between duty and blood, Lang races to understand who Lark was and why the dead still scare the living. The first time someone called my mother by a name that wasn't hers, the fans in Zion Baptist had just begun their rhythm, wood sticks clapping against paper palms, stirring a kind of breeze that wasn't cool enough for grief. It was a Saturday in June, air chewing the edges of every breath. Sunlight slid through stained glass like slices of mango and cherry, painting the casket with colors that did nothing to soften the fact of it. Alma Ward, head of our kitchen table, ruler of chalk dust and spelling bees, gone. We had a church full of people who loved her and owed her. Men she'd kept after school to help them sound out long words. Women she'd ushered through GEDs. Grandmothers whose biscuits she'd perfected by intuition alone. My sister, Naomi, squeezed my hand with nails she hadn't had time to paint. The choir hummed a faint, "Great is thy faithfulness," and Pastor Hill cleared his throat, a sound full of miles. Then he came up the center aisle, an older man in a midnight suit that looked like it had lived in a closet for decades, shoulders still proud, cane ticking against the runner like a metronome. Dark skin with red undertones, hair cut close, a face held tight as a secret. He didn't look at the program, didn't glance at the slideshow of Alma in oversized sweaters. Arm wrestling her students, he went straight for the casket with a kind of magnet pull. I shifted. Part of me was sun, part of me was uniform. I'd worn the badge that morning because it made me feel like steel when I felt more like sugar water. Folks in Bayard did that sometimes wore their work when they needed armor. The man reached out and laid 2 fingers on my mother's hand, like he was checking a pulse that wouldn't return. "Rest easy," he said, voice low and ragged with a New Orleans tremor. "Rest easy, Lark." It was quiet enough that maybe 10 people should have heard him. But grief bends sound. The word ricocheted, and suddenly there was a hush that told me 100 people had. Naomi froze, her breath hitching. Pastor Hill stumbled to the side, then remembered he was supposed to shepherd, and moved toward the stranger, soft palms out. "Brother, we appreciate your presence, but—" The man flinched back just a hair, like he'd recognize a preacher anywhere, but would not be deterred. He looked up then, and his eyes caught mine. They had the weird brightness of someone who'd been living under a lid and finally stepped into day. There was a plea in them that made my skin itch. "Sergeant Ward," he said, like he knew me. That got my feet moving. "Sir," I said, hauling authority over my soft voice. "Step away from the casket." He blinked, glanced at the badge like a test of whose name mattered most in that moment. Ward on my chest, Lark on his tongue. Then he nodded once, solemn as Sunday, and stepped back. I guided him by the elbow, not quite touching, toward the side aisle. The congregation watched us like a parade. Outside, the heat slapped us, relentless and democratic, and I let the church door ease shut behind us, muffling choir and sobs and program pages fluttering like trapped moths. "Tell me your name," I said. He studied me. "Does it matter?" "It does today." He sucked his teeth, smiling without joy. "You got your mama's eyes." "Her name," I said, flat now, "was Lark," he said. "Her name," I repeated, the way you push a fact until it holds, "was Alma Ward." Something in his face softened and then hardened, the way gumbo thickens if you forget to stir. He nodded toward the church. "She taught 3rd grade, like the Lord put chalk in her hand. I ain't come to cause trouble. I came to see her home. You can do that without talking in riddles." He pulled a folded program from his jacket. It was mine. My face stared back at me from the corner Naomi had put our pictures there. A quiet flex that she was always the organized one. The man traced my name with a finger. "I know who you are, Sergeant," he said. "I knew who she was before she was Alma." The door creaked behind me. Naomi slid out, long braids pinned back for heat, but already escaping. Her eyes were those soft brown marbles she'd had since we were kids, but right now they were hard as stones. "Lang, they're pastors." "I'll be right in," I said. She stared at the man, reading him like a board book. "You a friend of our mother's?" she asked. "I am," he said. "What's your name?" Naomi demanded, out of patience. The man took a breath. "Henry," he said. "Henry Baptiste." The last name hung there, cypress heavy. I'd heard it before, somewhere in the pocket of my memory where you put half-finished jigsaw pieces. "You from New Orleans," Naomi said, half-statement. "Born in the 7th Ward, raised under hurricanes." He looked back toward the church. She was too, before. Before. Naomi's jaw worked. She turned to me, a warning simmering. "Don't, not today. Please." "Mr. Baptiste," I said, choosing politeness as my weapon. "You can sit. You can grieve. But you're not going to introduce names that don't belong to my mother without explaining yourself. You'll do it after the service with me, and if you mean harm, I'll know." "I mean no harm," he said. He reached into his jacket again, slow, and my palm hovered over the Glock at my hip habits, our habits. He pulled out a small, old Polaroid edged in flaking white, handed it to me like a fragile charge. The picture showed a young woman in a tin-roofed kitchen, arms slung around a man with a boxer's posture. She had a towel tied around her hair and a knife in one hand, laughing at the camera like it was a friend. I saw my mother's smile in that laugh. Underneath, in blue fountain pen ink, Lark plus hen, 1997. My stomach went cold while the day stayed hot. Henry tapped the picture. "I ain't a ghost," he said, voice thin. "But I am from her other life. After the service," I said. It came out hoarse. He nodded. "After." We went back inside in a knot of quiet. Pastor Hill lifted his eyebrows like a prayer had been answered. The choir exhaled. People returned their eyes to the casket. I helped Naomi to the front pew and sat down. My badge suddenly felt like it was carved from ice. The service moved in that old way, eulogies. There were recipes and genealogies, and jokes that only work because the person they're about is there to hear them, somehow. When the time came, Naomi stood and sang "His Eye is on the Sparrow," and the way her voice broke on the second verse will follow me to whatever comes after this life. When it was my turn, I talked about the first time my mother taught me to write my name, how she corrected me not by erasing, but by circling what was right. "See, baby? The G is perfect. Keep the G." I said nothing about Polaroids or names scribbled in fountain pen. I thought about a kitchen I didn't recognize, and a laugh that was hers. After, there were hugs that felt like they might break a rib, casseroles with foil that caught the light like extra halos. People pressed bills into my palm and said, "For flowers," and I nodded because grief has a script, and it's rude to go off book. Henry waited outside by the old oak in the churchyard, hat in hand now, sweat darkening his collar. I came to him with a plate Naomi had thrust at me: fried chicken, baked macaroni, greens that tasted like someone had whispered a secret over them. "We can go to the fellowship hall," I said. "There's a room." He shook his head. "No walls," he said quietly. "Not for this." We walked to the far end of the lot, where the pavement gave up and weeds took over. Cicadas yammered. My phone buzzed a text from my chief, Amerson, a white man who pretended not to notice. He was always pretending not to notice. "Take the time you need. Proud of you." I locked the screen. "Talk," I said. Henry lifted his face to the sun, as if testing whether God was eavesdropping. "We called her Lark," he said. "Short for Skylark. 'Cause she had a way of flying out of a room, even when her feet were on the floor. Your mother Alma could dance, baby. She'd cook and hum, and it sounded like the whole neighborhood would show up just to hear. And when things got tight, she was the one who knew which door wouldn't bang too loud." "What kind of tight?" I asked. Henry's eyes slid to me. "You a cop?" he said, not as a question. I didn't answer. He nodded to himself. "The kind of tight where it's money or it's blood. We was family, after a fashion. You remember the late 90s? Maybe you too young. But New Orleans was a kettle with the lid rattling, and certain boys figured out how to steal what the big dogs were stealing. We didn't break no old ladies' doors, didn't hurt nobody who wasn't already hurting us. We took from the people who smoked cigars about it. She was good at making a plan, and one day she was gone. Theft." He snapped his fingers. "Like a bird. You telling me my mother was a what? Bank robber?" "We called it surviving," he said. "Long time ago. Long enough ago that you keep a picture in your jacket." He smiled small. "You the one called it a jacket. I've been wearing this in my bones since 1997. I swallowed, the taste of greens changing in my mouth. "She left," I said. "Said she had to," he said softly. "Said the wind had turned." He looked toward the distant highway. "Somebody got shot. Somebody else started telling stories to the wrong kind of law. Names got said. Witnesses got made. And then she wasn't in New Orleans no more, and I ain't seen her again till I saw the notice in the paper, and my knees damn near buckled." "Why now?" I asked. "If you loved her?" Henry's eyes snapped to mine with an old man's sudden fury. "Don't you tell me what I felt," he said, voice fraying. The anger leaked away almost immediately, like he'd rehearsed it and grown tired. "I ain't come here to set my name on fire, Sergeant. I came to lay some flowers on the right story. People get buried twice, once in the ground, once when the truth goes with them." Naomi's voice called my name from across the lot. I turned. She stood framed by heat, mirage, and dust, her face a question. "You have more?" I asked Henry. He took a deep breath, reached back into his jacket. This time, the thing he pulled out was not a photograph, but a small envelope, off-white with the kind of smoothness that comes from years in a drawer. My name was written on it in my mother's cursive. Langston, sweet and sure. I reached for it with something like hunger. "I didn't open it," Henry said quickly. "I found it tucked behind a little painting she gave me. She sent it years ago, then sent word not to mail it unless I saw news that," he swallowed, "that she was gone. I ain't mailed it, 'cause I figured the Lord meant for me to put it in your hand myself." My hand shook as I slid my thumb under the flap. The glue gave with a soft sigh. Inside was a safety deposit box key, a jangle of small metal, attached to a brass tag stamped with the number 314, and a slip of paper with a bank name, Reaver and Trust, Canal Street, New Orleans. Under the bank name, in my mother's hand, "If this ever finds you, find me," there was an address, and below that, "I love you. Be gentle with the parts of me I didn't know how to give you." I don't remember deciding to sit, but I did, on the low curb, the asphalt warm through my black slacks. Naomi reached us then, eyes cutting from the envelope to the key to Henry's face. "What is that?" she asked. "Something we're going to argue about," I said. She held my gaze for a long heartbeat, then looked at the brass 314. "Mama," she murmured, a prayer and a curse at once. Behind us, somebody called for photos, and somebody else called for plates to be covered, and the world kept moving like it always does when your life gets split along a precise fault line. Bayard is the kind of town that runs on the law like a wagon runs on grease. Too much and folks slide. Too little and things seize up. Our department is 12 sworn officers and one dispatcher who can tell from your first breath whether you need prayer or handcuffs. My boss, Chief Amberson, moved here from the coast after he retired early from the Loxy, a phrase that fits in the mouth of a man who collected too many favors. He hires black and takes photos for the paper. He sends us to implicit bias training and then tells jokes with a wink. I sat in my unmarked Impala with the AC fighting for its life, the envelope open on the passenger seat, the key between my fingers like a small legal sin. I stared at the brass as if it might change to a house key, something normal, something from the life we had yesterday. New Orleans was 2.5 hours away, depending on traffic and fate. My phone buzzed again. Amberson. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to it anyway. "Lang," he said, gentle enough. "Don't you come in Monday? You hear me? Take a week. If you need the department chaplain, that white-haired man who loves coffee more than Jesus, you know the number." I clicked the phone off and turned the key in the ignition, then turned it back off, then on. Being decisive felt like walking on marbles. A shadow crossed my window. I looked up to see Maya Brooks, the only journalist in a 50-mile radius who uses both a pen and a backbone. She ran a morning show on the local AM station, wrote a column for the Bayard Banner, and posted everything to an Instagram full of everyone's antics. Her hair was in a colorful wrap, big hoop earrings glinting, notebook already in hand. She looked apologetic and hungry, which is a decent description of journalism anywhere. "Lang," she said through the crack I rolled down, "I'm so sorry. Your mama made me take home a pie last Christmas and called me skinny, like it was a crime." "Thank you," I said. "Is it true?" she asked softly. "A man called her Bye-Bye Lark? The rumor engine in Bayard is a jet. By the time you think to board it, it has already landed in 3 other towns." "Don't," I said, my voice a thread. "Not today, Maya." She nodded, bit her lip. "Okay, then I'm just neighbor. You need anything?" I looked at the key on my seat. "You trust anybody at River and Trust in New Orleans?" I asked. Her eyes widened. She was too good to pretend she didn't connect the dots. "I know a bank manager through my cousin's husband," she said. "Why?" "I'm going to the city," I said. "Tomorrow. You going to tell Chief?" "I'm on leave," I said. She didn't push. "Be careful," she said instead, and that meant more than one thing. The house on Oakhurst where Naomi and I grew up had a porch that sagged like a smile, losing patience. The azaleas along the walk were my mother's pride, still stubbornly pink. The screen door creaked, same sound as always. I felt 20 and then 12 and then 35 all in the same minute. Inside, grief had unsettled everything. There's a mess that comes from not caring where anything goes. And then there's the other kind, that careful disarray, where every object is a decision you don't want to make. The casserole carriers were stacked on the counter like small steel suitcases. Naomi's chart, the one she'd made in a burst of control. Food who brought when return, hung on the fridge, her handwriting marching across with that teacher's kid authority. We moved through the rooms like museum guards. Naomi went to the dining room and stood for a long time staring at the hutch, as if the glass might open into another life. I went to my mother's bedroom and opened the top drawer of the knitstand. Hand cream, a Bible, a stack of letters folded so many times their edges had turned feather soft. I knew better than to read them without Naomi. I closed the drawer. "Lang?" Naomi called, not loud. "In here." She came to the doorway, holding a shoebox in both hands like it might jump. The lid was rubber banded. She set it on the bedspread. We looked at it like a bomb. "I found it in the attic," she said. "In the bottom of the Christmas ornaments bin, under the fake snow." I slid the rubber band off and lifted the lid. Inside were photos, a delicate cluster of Polaroids and old prints, many with that same blue ink neatness along the bottom. Some were familiar, the elementary school field day, a long-ago Christmas where Naomi had insisted on matching pajamas, a picnic at the lake, but a third of them were strangers. The woman young enough to be my sister, laughing in a kitchen I'd never stood in, leaning against a jukebox I'd never heard, standing with her arm around a man in a crab boil apron. Lark plus June, Lark plus Hen, 7th Ward, 1998, Chapatulas, 2000. There were also things that weren't photos. A slip of paper heavy with old bank smell. River and Trust Deposit Box 314. A locker receipt stamped with the letters U.S. in faded red. A newspaper clipping about a federal grand jury seated in New Orleans to consider charges tied to organized theft, dated 2001. The edges were singed, as if someone had tried to burn it and then changed their mind. Naomi and I sat cross-legged on our mother's bed, the box between us, childhood pressed into the quilt beneath our knees. "She was young," Naomi whispered. "We all were once," I said, and it came out a little bitter. Naomi closed her eyes. "Don't turn on her," she said. "Not yet. I'm not," I lied. I looked down at the photo of Lark with a guitar in her lap, mid-chord, head thrown back. My mother's hands had never held a guitar that I knew of. She clapped in church off-beat, just enough to be endearing. Naomi picked up the bank slip and breathed out through her nose, a habit that always meant she was counting to 10. "You're going," she said. "Tomorrow," I said. "I'm coming," she said. "You have your kids. Dion can keep them one night. He owes me 3 years of sleep." She looked at me, eyes dark, mouth set. "You're not the only one who loved her." I nodded. "Okay." She sagged a little in relief and grief's tired humor. "We're going to New Orleans with a key like people in movies," she said. "You realize that?" "Yeah," I said. "We realize that." We put the photos back, one by one, like lowering birds into a nesting place. When we were done, Naomi left the room, and I sat for a minute with the house's old sounds wrapping around me, the tick of the hallway clock, a distant dog, wind fingering the trees outside. I was almost asleep in a chair by the window when I heard the noise. It was soft, a scuff against the back door, then the hiccup of a lock that didn't know whether it was day or night. I stood fast, every nerve waking. The Glock felt heavier than grief in my hand. I moved through the hall like water, pelvis tucked, shoulder brushing the wall, muscle remembering what muscle is for. The kitchen was a cave of silhouettes. Another sound of breath, and then silence, the kind you only hear when someone else is trying not to make noise. I flicked on the light. A man bolted from the back door like a rabbit breaking cover. I got the briefest frame of hind ball cap pulled low, a white t-shirt tight across a chest that still lifted weights, dark jeans, boots ghosting the floor. He hit the screen door with his shoulder, didn't bother with the knob. It popped like the world's dullest gun. He was gone, a streak of motion toward the side yard and the street. "Hey," I barked, useless word, cop command that means stop, and always means go, to the wrong people. I hit the porch in time to see a sedan at the curb, no plates on the front. The driver, another shadow, leaned across and pushed the passenger door open. The runner dove in, the door slammed. Tires squealed like the sound had been waiting. But this is Mississippi, and we don't require front plates. The bumper that faced me was a chrome smile with no name. I stood in the road with my gun down at my side, chest hammering, a neighbor's porch light flicking on in a slow, nosy strobe. Lang? Naomi's voice behind me, small, terrified. What? Back inside, I said, gentle as you can when your veins are marching. Call this in, I added, as she made the sound of a laugh that wasn't. We did the sweep. Cops think in grids, even when it's your own house. The back door lock wasn't broken. It had been scraped by something thin and precise. The kitchen window had a smear, left by a palm that wasn't ours. He'd gone through 2 cabinets, the junk drawer, and the chair cushions. He had moved the shoebox, which was how we knew he didn't find it. On the counter, scratched into the condensation ring left by someone's sweating glass, were 3 letters, L-A-R. Not subtle, Naomi said. Or very, I said. Depends on your nerve. We waited for the squad car. It was Jordan Pierce who answered the call. Her hair pulled into a puff, and her mouth set in a line that meant business. Jordan had been my partner for 3 years, and there were days I thought I'd lose my job sooner than I'd lose her respect. She looked at the scrapes on the lock, the window, the condensation, and at my face. You're on leave, she said. Apparently so is he, I said, nodding at the street where the sedan had disappeared. She looked at Naomi, at the shoebox we had shoved under the sink during our panic, at my hands, which still had a tremor. You need me to write this up as a nothing? She asked, voice neutral, testing a boundary she didn't like. No, I said. You need to write it up as what it was. And what was it? Someone looking for a past that didn't die. Jordan nodded. Okay. She took the report with the efficiency of someone who can do her job in a hurricane. When she finished, she met my eyes. You going to tell me why a man at your mother's funeral called her the wrong name? No, I said. Not tonight. She inhaled, slow. You going to tell me before it hits the banner? I thought of Maya's eyes. Probably, I said. Jordan took a step closer. I don't have to remind you that conflict of interest is a phrase that looks better on your cousin than in a courtroom, right? I know. And I don't have to remind you that Chief is going to pretend to care and then actually care if it gets in his scrapbook. You don't. She went to the door, pausing. You need me to sit a while? Not tonight, I said, but thank you. She nodded. Lock your windows and stop giving grief the spare key. After she left, Naomi and I lay on the living room carpet, like kids in a summer blackout, listening to the AC turn on and off. The house hummed a lullaby we were too awake to hear. You think she was protecting us, Naomi said into the ceiling. I think she did what she thought she had to, I said. Same thing, she murmured. Maybe. We left at dawn, Naomi in driving jeans and a t-shirt that said Black Teachers Matter. Me in a polo and the kind of hat I buy when I start believing a hat might make me invisible. The highway unspooled through pine and billboards for injury lawyers and church revivals. Naomi chewed gum like it owed her money. The sun turned up the heat without asking. We crossed the state line, and the air shifted, wet and old. New Orleans rose out of the flat, like a story you don't tell your pastor. The roads were scarred, the water never far. The city smelled like sugar and iron, and if you've lived with grief for a week, you know, that's how the world smells too. River and Trust on Canal was the kind of bank that likes brass more than people. The foyer had marble that made your footsteps sound like someone else's. A man at a podium watched us, as if we were going to ask for something he'd have to tell a manager about. Good morning, Naomi said, like a schoolteacher reciting the pledge. Can I help you? He asked, voice arranged. We need access to a safety deposit box, I said. Number 314. Do you have the key? He asked, already looking at my sister's shoes like they were wrong for marble. I placed the brass on the counter. He examined it like it might be counterfeit, then gestured to a desk where a woman with a bun so tight it smoothed out bad news sat typing. She looked up, took us in, and then stood. "Follow me," she said. We signed papers that said we existed and were allowed to continue existing on bank property. I showed a driver's license. Naomi showed a teacher ID and a gaze that could power a small city. The woman led us down a hallway that had never been caught in a hurricane because it had never been introduced to the outside world. The vault door was a movie prop nobody laughed at. It opened with a sigh that sounded like the place exhaled money. Inside, she matched our key to another and turned. The little drawer slid out, lighter than the weight it put on my neck. "We'll give you privacy," she said, and left us in a room with a table and a mirror I didn't trust. Naomi sat. I stood because my knees had opinions. We looked at the metal drawer, like it might either save or ruin us. "You ready?" I asked. "No," she said. "Open it anyway." I did. Inside was a leather folder, cracked but oiled, the kind my mother would have kept her best recipes in. There was also a cassette tape in a little plastic sleeve, the label blank, the kind of thing that no one owns a player for anymore, unless you're sentimental or dangerous. And there was a file that looked less bank and more federal manila, stamped with a faded seal, the eagle's chest scratched by time. Naomi put her hand over mine before I could reach. "Let me," she said, and I let her, because grief had a hierarchy, and I wasn't going to fight my sister for place in line. She opened the leather first. Inside were papers that smelled like old. The first was a birth certificate. My breath went sideways. Langston Michael Ward, born in Bayard General, mother. Alma Charlotte Ward, father. The line was blank. Naomi looked at me with eyes that already knew I would pretend it didn't hurt, so we didn't talk about it. Next was another certificate, Naomi Elaine Ward, and beneath that, taped to the back, a Polaroid of us as babies on a couch that wasn't our couch. A woman's arm came into the frame, holding Naomi steady. You couldn't see the woman's face, just her bracelet, tiny gold birds linked wing to wing. "Her Lark bracelet," Naomi whispered. She touched her own wrist. She said she lost it before I was born. We moved on. There were letters. A thin bundle written in my mother's hand, addressed to Hen. Another bundle addressed to Miriam and June, names that tasted like women with stories. I skimmed one, then another, my heart stumbling over a sentence. "We are safe in Bayard for now. They placed us good. The marshal said not to write, but I dream better when I see your names." I blinked. The room made a shivering sound, like a train passing somewhere we couldn't hear. "What did you just read?" Naomi asked, voice steady, eyes not. I lifted the letter. "Marshals," I said, "placed us." "Witness protection," Naomi said, slow as syrup. "Witsec." I said nothing, because there are times silence is a better oath than words. Naomi opened the manila file. Inside were photocopied documents, official and bored, the way federal paperwork is bored even by the blood it's mopping up. The first page bore a title, United States Marshals Service Witness Security Program Transfer Summary. Under it, subject, Dalacroix, Lark, a.k.a. Alma Charlotte Ward. Dependents, 2 minors, Langston M. Ward, Naomi E. Ward. Date, July 17, 2001. Reason for placement, cooperation in federal investigation, organized theft ring, Crescent Crew. My mother's signature was at the bottom. Sturdy, certain, the same one on my field trip permission slips. Naomi made a sound that was either a laugh or a sob. "She told 3rd graders to sit crisscross applesauce," she whispered. "She packed orange slices in Ziplocs and cut our sandwiches into triangles. She had a marshal's file. She was 2 people," I said, hearing in my own voice the thing I hated in other cop, the way they say facts like syringes. "Maybe 3. We turned the pages like we were touching the edges of a river that might pull us in. There were lists of rules, lists of whereabouts, lists of places we could never have gone, because you can't go where you don't know to look. There was a blacked-out section that made me itch. Blocked names like windows painted over. There was a note from a deputy U.S. Marshal I'd never met. Subject expresses concern that past associates may attempt contact. Advise caution. Subject declines relocation further north due to children's roots. Children, Naomi said, and her voice broke on the word. At the back of the file was a photocopy of a photograph. 4 people sat on milk crates in a yard with a chain-link fence. A pot boiled on a burner, balanced on another crate. Beads of sweat glowed on their faces. My mother Lark held a baby whose mouth curved like night. The man beside her, Henry, younger, less tired, looked at her instead of the camera. The other 2 were women I didn't know. One had braids, the other had a scar like a lightning bolt, cool as weather. The caption, written in a fine hand in the white border of the original, had been mostly cut off. All that remained were 3 letters, right at the edge. L-A-A. Naomi put the file down like you put down a glass that's too full. Then she reached for the cassette tape, mouth set like a door. "What if we can't listen to it?" she said. "We'll find a way," I said. She slipped it into her tote like a pirate sliding a jewel into a pocket. We were almost done when I saw the last thing flattened under the leather folder as if it had been trying to hide. Another envelope, this one addressed to me in the same hand as before, but more hurried, lines slanting, letters crowded. The back was sealed with a sticker shaped like a small bird. I opened it because I had run out of reasons not to open things. Inside was a single sheet, my mother's handwriting uncurled across it. "Lang, if you made it here, it means something followed me." I told myself that if I kept the teacher version of me in front of you, the streets wouldn't hear your names. I don't know if I was right. If you find Hen, be kind. He has made mistakes. I have too. There was a night on St. Claude I will never forgive myself for. Tell Naomi I kept her drawings, all of them. Don't let our past be an excuse for your temper. You know how you are. The key is not money. It is memory. Use it to keep from hating me. Love is not a lie just because it had to be quiet. M. I had to sit down. The chair was cold and solid, unlike everything else. St. Claude, Naomi said, eyes pinning the word like it was a butterfly. Where is that? A street, I said. In New Orleans. She breathed like she was climbing something. Then we go there next. Behind the vault door, the bank breathed its usual money breath. Outside, the city rolled on a bed of history, so thick you could sleep and still drown. I put the letters back, the file, the Polaroids. I kept the tape and the last note. When we stepped into the June blaze, my phone vibrated again. "Juo Dan, you okay?" Report filed. No print's worth a damn. You see the paper? I opened Maya's latest post with a thumb that didn't want to know. There was a photo of the church door, sunlight on its scuffed paint. The caption, "At the funeral of beloved teacher Alma Ward, questions rose like heat. Who was Lark?" The comments were already a bonfire. I swallowed the taste of rust in my mouth and called Jourdan. "I'm in New Orleans," I said. "No kidding," she said, dry as bread. "Chief came by your house this morning, saw the report, made a face like a horse. He will say family first in public and what the hell in private." "Let him," I said. "You got a plan?" "Find the thing I'm already inside of," I said. She made a noise that could have been respect. "You need anything from me?" "If I send you a name," I said, "check it quiet. You don't even have to ask nice." I hung up and caught my reflection in the bank's glass. A man in a hat he didn't need, holding a tote that belonged to a teacher and a cassette that belonged to a thief. Naomi's reflection stood beside mine, face set, eyes tired and dangerous. "We go to St. Claude," she said. "Yeah," I said. "And then?" "Then we ask a question a cop shouldn't have to ask," I said. Who was my mother when she wasn't my mother? We walked toward the car, the sound of traffic rolling like a restless ocean. Somewhere, Henry Baptiste leaned on a cane and remembered a laugh that had been an entire summer. Somewhere, a man in a ball cap told somebody else that he hadn't found what he'd come for. Somewhere, a cassette tape waited for a player, and a street waited for footsteps that had almost forgotten the dance. As we pulled into traffic, past the streetcars and the tourists wedded to sugar and vice, Naomi said softly, "I hope she had joy." "She did," I said, without knowing whether it was faith or story. We turned toward St. Claude, toward whatever this city and our mother kept in its pockets, and the day bent around us like heat around a storm. St. Claude Avenue ran like a spine, all heat and potholes and stories halfway told. We crossed Elysian Fields, and the air changed, got heavier with the scent of something frying and something blooming, and something old that wouldn't leave. The streetcars hissed a block over, like people trying to keep gossip quiet. On the neutral ground, a man sold ice in cups, cherry syrup staining his fingers like work. Naomi drove with both hands on the wheel, jaw set. I watched doorways. I kept counting 1, 2, 3 like a heartbeat, not because it helps, but because you have to give your fear something to do. "We need a tape player," she said. "You know a place?" "In New Orleans?" she snorted. "There's always a place." We found one at a pawn shop with a peeling sign that still bragged radio TV repair like it was a promise God could enforce. Inside, it smelled like dust and pawned rings. The white man behind the counter looked up with that St. Bernard Parish tiredness that reads black. People like paperwork. Either trouble or a paycheck, depending on the day. "Morning," Naomi said, sweet as you can be when you've memorized the ways men look at you. "You folks lost?" he asked, eyes flicking to my hat, my hands, the way we moved together like people who've been in a hospital waiting room before. "No," Naomi said. "We're shopping." "What you looking for?" "A cassette player. Portable." He laughed once, not unkindly, but not kind. "Everybody's a DJ now." "Everybody's grieving," Naomi said. He stiffened. Something in him heard the truth and stepped back from the edge, like a man who has seen water rise. He turned and rooted under a shelf, came up with a silver rectangle that looked like a spaceship if you'd never left the ground. "$25, he said. Naomi looked at the layer of grime, and then at the price tag that said $12. "20, she said. He blinked. "You got cash?" "Yes." "20, then." At the door, he cleared his throat. "And sorry for whatever made you need this." Naomi nodded without turning around. "Me too," she said. In the car, the player clicked and whirred like an old woman's knees. Naomi slid the cassette in and shut the lid with a firm mercy. Then she pressed play. Tape hiss is different than static. It's the sound of time standing up to be counted. We waited through 2 seconds, 10. Then I heard my mother's voice. "Okay," she said, breathy, too close to the microphone. "If this is playing, it means I failed at something or succeeded at something, depending on who you ask. Future me. If you're listening, stop it. This ain't for nostalgia. This is directions." Naomi sucked a breath through her teeth. "I am making this," our mother's voice said. The same day, the marshals called to say we were placed. I don't know what name I will have when this finds you. I hope I picked a good one. I wasn't good at picking before. Tape rustled. In the background, there was a TV low. Someone on the news saying something about a levy, like it was a metaphor players use when they don't want to say fear. "Lang, you got my temper," she said. "Naomi, you got my stubborn. Both of you got my laugh, and I hope it feels like having money. If this tape got to you, it means someone is looking for a ledger they think I kept. I didn't keep it. I hid it. We had a night on St. Claude where somebody died who shouldn't have. And I thought, we can't keep doing this. I thought if I gave the government names, I could come back to this city some days, something besides a rumor. But the names go to new names. That's how these men are. She went quiet a moment, the weight of a memory crossing a bridge that wasn't built strong enough. You go to St. Claude and Pauline, she said finally. The house with the blue porch ceiling. You knock twice, then 3, then twice again. If nobody answers, you talk to June at the barber shop on St. Claude and Claude. She still braids better than anybody breathing, and she knows where the bones are. Don't trust a man who shows you a badge before he shows you a reason. Don't trust a woman who laughs like she knows your story without asking. Don't trust anyone who says my name and smiles. She laughed then, soft, like she knew she was asking the impossible. If you can't find June, find Miriam. If you can't find Miriam, find the tree where the string of lights is always out. The ledger's not money, it's memory. It's the kind of memory men would kill for, because the truth can cost more than any diamond. I wrote down everything I couldn't carry. Naomi put her forehead against the steering wheel. My mother's voice dropped. And if you hear this, and you ain't my children, do the right thing and throw it in the river, she said. Please. The tape clicked, hissed, went silent. Naomi hit stop with a finger that was more fist than pointer. She really left a treasure map, she said, half incredulous, half aching. She left instructions, I said. It's what she was best at. We drove to Pauline. The houses there looked tired in that way. New Orleans houses do gorgeous and exhausted, like saints after a parade. The blue porch ceiling was there, but the porch itself sagged like a mouth going soft. The number on the post matched the one in my mother's letter. Naomi knocked the pattern 232, and we stood like kids with our backpacks on the first day, pretending we weren't scared. No answer. The neighbor across the street, an old man in a ribbed tank top, fanning himself on a stoop, watched us, with a suspicion he'd earned the right to wear like a hat. Who y'all, and why you beating on Miss Kiki's door? He asked. We're looking for June, Naomi called back. The braider. He squinted. You look like somebody I knew back when she had bad ideas and good gumbo, he said, gaze sliding over me, landing on Naomi. He pointed with his fan. June ain't at that barber shop no more. She braids out of her sister's place. Corner of Viller and Mandeville. Up the stairs. Door with the bead curtains. Tell her Mr. Leon didn't let y'all break in. We weren't going to, I said. Everybody says that, he said, smirking, and went back to his fan. The shop at Viller and Mandeville was a narrow space up a flight of wood stairs that had opinions about my weight. The bead curtain did that clack-clack like a polite threat as we stepped through. Inside, the smell of hair grease and burning combs was a nostalgia that could knock you over. There were mismatched chairs and a mirror with lights around it that made everybody look like they were halfway to famous. A woman in her 50s with braids down to the backs of her knees stood behind a teenage girl, parting hair with the clean authority of someone who has always been trusted with scalp. Gold hoops, scar at the corner of her mouth that turned a smile into a story. Her eyes flicked to the beads, then to us. They started to sizzle a little. She had the kind of presence that makes a room behave. Y'all can sit or y'all can go, she said. I don't do walk-ins unless the spirit tells me to. We're not here for hair, Naomi said. We're here for June. You got her, the woman said. Her hands never stopped moving. My mother's tape had said June braids better than anyone breathing. True things sometimes introduce themselves that way. June Delacroix? I asked. She drew in a small breath so quiet it could have been a cough. You, the law? She asked. It wasn't suspicion. It was inventory. I am, I said. On leave. She looked at my face the way a mother looks at a boy who is almost a man and still a boy. Then her gaze slid to Naomi. Something like recognition moved behind her eyes. You from Bayard, she said, not as a question. Yes, Naomi said. Your mama's name? Alma, Naomi said. People called her. Don't say it in here, June said sharply, startling the teenager in her chair. Kim, baby, give us 5. The girl hustled out with a towel around her shoulders like a cape. June wiped her hands on her rag, then pointed to the chairs. We sat. She stood. The room held its breath. I swore I'd never see y'all in this city with grief on you, she said. And yet, you knew her, Naomi said, voice small and big at once. Everyone knew her, June said. People who loved her. People who hated her. People who did both at the same time. You got her eyes. She nodded at me, and her way of checking exits. I didn't bother hiding the fact I'd looked at the back door twice. We're looking for something she left, I said. June laughed once. A list of bets she lost? The recipe for that foolish bread pudding that made men fall in love against their will? A ledger, Naomi said. She said it was on St. Claude. June's mouth went flat. Close that door behind you, she said, and lock it. Naomi did. June leaned against the counter, arms folded. You know what happened on St. Claude? She asked. Or you only know the part the marshals wrote down? We know somebody died? I said. We don't know who. Boy, she said, you better stop calling yourself a boy in that tone, 'cause that's how you voice sound right now. You're a man. Own it. She pinched the bridge of her nose and let her hand fall. A teenager died. 16. Name was Tremaine Dorsey. His mama worked nights at charity. He was walking home with a bag of hot links. One of ours, she flexed her jaw. One of them men with too much to prove and not enough sense got jumpy. He heard a siren that wasn't for us and thought it was. He fired when nobody asked him to fire. The bullet did what bullets do. It found the wrong person. Naomi covered her mouth with her hand. I saw her face, June said. I have seen women in storm shelters, and women in labor, and women looking at empty refrigerators. I ain't never seen a face like the one your mother had when Tremaine fell. It was like someone folded her in half. That same night, she said she was done. June's gaze sharpened on me. And then she told a man with a badge where to look. Who? I asked. June's eyes slid to the window and back. I ain't put that man's name in the air. Some names still rust metal. What I will say is this. We all thought she did it to save herself. That's not all true. She did it to save y'all. And she did it to save whoever would be the next Tremaine. That ledger, she wrote it because she didn't trust badges or banks or men. She wrote it so if someone needed to be paid back, there'd be a bill. My phone hummed in my pocket. I didn't look. You know where it is? Naomi asked. June hesitated just long enough to make it clear she was drawing a line she didn't want to draw. I know where she hid it, she said. I helped her pick the place. But if I tell you, I make you a target with me. We're already targets, I said. Someone broke into our house, in Bayard. I know, June said. Naomi and I both startled. How? Because the men who want this ledger don't ask permission, she said. They don't stay in the parish lines. One of them came sniffing my stairs last night. He don't know my locks like I do. He don't know I sleep with one shoe on. She smiled, small, without warmth. Get up. She led us back through the bead curtain, down the stairs that popped like knuckles, out to the hot spit of sidewalk, where a stray bead from the curtain had rolled and lodged in the crack by the door. Across the street, she said. St. Claude corner store with the mural of the eagle. You go in, you buy a pack of zaps you ain't going to eat, and you ask the boy at the register if the back cooler is still broken. He'll say it's always broken. You say, good, and it won't mind being opened. He don't know what that means. He'll shrug. You go to the back, and you open the cooler, and count to 10, and close it. If nobody else, you pull up the mat in front of the cooler, and you will see a patch of tile that ain't tile. Tap it. It's a lid. Under the lid is a gap. That's where we put the ledger when your mother said her name out loud to a badge for the last time. Why the cooler? Naomi asked. Because nobody wants to crawl on their knees back there and get wet. Because the hum of the compressor makes secrets think they're safe. Because we were 26 and stupid, and we thought hiding things in plain sight still worked. June's face changed, a tender pause moving over it like a cloud. She loved y'all, she said, even when she was lying. Especially then. You think that ledger is going to make you feel better? It won't. It will make you feel powerful for 6 minutes, and then it will make you feel like throwing up. Truth is expensive that way. But she put a palm on Naomi's cheek, then mine, quick, like a blessing you don't want God to catch you giving. It's yours. We crossed the street like amateurs. I hated how exposed we felt. Every door had a watcher. Every watcher had a jaw. The corner store's bell dinged as Naomi pushed the door. Inside, it was cold enough to keep secrets fresh. A fan squeaked. The register kid looked up, nodded at us, went back to a video on his phone loud enough for me to catch the punchline and not the joke. Zaps, Naomi said under her breath, and grabbed a bag of spicy crawtators, because of course she did. At the counter, she did the script. The back cooler still broken? She asked. The boy's skinny eyes half-lidded with boredom rolled his shoulder. Always, he said. Good, she said. Then it won't mind being opened. He squinted at her like she'd just asked him to define metaphor. Then he waved at the back with a ringed hand and went back to his phone. Video laughter washing the whole transaction in gum. We went to the back. The cooler hummed like a patient. Naomi looked at me, and I looked back, and then she opened the door like she was opening an old story. Cold breathed out over our arms. We counted to 10, because June said count to 10, and the best way to make grief your ally is to let somebody else make decisions for you. I closed the door, then bent and pulled up the rubber mat. The floor underneath had been mopped, and mopped again until the mop gave up. But the patch of tile, that wasn't tile. It was smoother, newer, out of place. I tapped. It made a sound that was not floor a hollow knot. We looked at each other. I slid my fingers under the edge of the fake tile, and the lid gave, grudging at first, then grateful, like it wanted to be done. Underneath was a gap not much bigger than a bread pan. Wrapped in plastic, duct-taped like hope, lay a book. I reached for it, the air in my throat dry, and lifted it out. The plastic bled humidity. I set it on my knee and peeled tape with my teeth like a teenager stealing a secret. The plastic came away with a sound that made the hair rise on my arms. The ledger was a school composition book. Black and white cowhide cover, the word composition in a fake label. On the first page, in blue pen, impeccable and firm, Ledger 2000 to 2001. If you are reading this, you owe somebody. Naomi held the book with both hands. She flipped through slow, reverent, sick names, dates, amounts, places, notes, who took, who gave, who got hurt and never called the police because the police would have been worse, who in uniform met with who in aprons, who used church vans and charity drives and college funds like shields. Our mother's handwriting made it all polite. That was the worst thing. Some names were smudged where the ink had bled in the heat. Some were clean like a directive. I kept breathing, counting, the way I do when I want to swing at something and know I shouldn't. Let's go, I said, voice small. Naomi nodded. She slid the book under her shirt, flat against her belly, like we were teenagers again, hiding cigarettes we never smoked. When we turned, the boy at the register wasn't at the register. The bell at the door hadn't dinged. That should have been nothing. It wasn't. We walked like customers who were about to leave without buying. Naomi remembered the chips at the last second, slapped them on the counter, left 2 5s, because math with fear is a trick. We stepped out into heat that felt like it was trying to make a point. The man leaning against my car made a different point. He was the build of someone who hasn't forgiven the gym for closing after Katrina. Ball cap low. White t-shirt with that tightness that meant ritual. His boots had red dust on them like he'd been somewhere else recently. He looked at us and smiled like a blade. "Y'all shopping?" he asked. "Move off my car," I said. He tilted his head. "You ungrateful," he said. "I ain't even scratched the paint. Move," I said again. "Or what? You gonna arrest me, Sergeant?" He said the title like a slur, like a game. For a second, my fingers twitched toward where my gun should be. Then I remembered the sign on the shop door, nitrogen monoxide firearms, and that I'd left it in the glove box to avoid a conversation with a pawn shop owner who looked like he wished he could call a supervisor on my existence. "Or I will lay you on that asphalt and let the sun teach you something about pain," Naomi said. He laughed, surprised. "I like you," he said. A new voice cut in. "You won't like me." Henry Baptiste stepped out from a shadow like he'd been poured from it. He didn't have a cane today. His posture was still proud. His face had the look of a man who knows time doesn't hand out refunds. "Move along, Trey," Henry said. "Ain't no good for you here." The man Trey looked Henry up and down. There was history there, the messy old kind that sticks to your tongue. He weighed it against something only he felt. "Old men shouldn't stand between wolves and the lamb," he said. "Then you got the wrong story," Henry said. "Ain't no lamb here." Trey spit a line of something dark into the gutter, too neat to be accident. Then he pushed away from the car and slipped into the passenger side of the sedan that rolled up quiet as a secret. The driver, another shadow, didn't look at us. They were gone, like a thought you can't catch twice. Henry watched the car's reflection smear in a storefront window. "They fast until they not," he said. "You were following us," I said. He didn't bother lying. "I told you I wasn't going to let you face this city with only your grief and a tote bag." Naomi's hand went over the ledger under her shirt. She made herself still. "You got it," Henry said, reading our faces. "We did," Naomi said. "And now what?" "Now you don't go back to Bayard the same way you came," he said. "Men like Trey got cousins on the interstate. The ledger, it's heavy in your hands, but it's heavier in the air. People can smell it. Tell us about the names," I said. Henry's mouth flattened. "I can tell you stories. That ledger can tell you facts, which is worse." "Who's the badge?" Naomi asked. "The one June wouldn't name." Henry went quiet long enough for a streetcar to pass in the distance, bell clanging like a polite emergency. "There were 2, he said finally. "One wore blue. One wore a suit. The blue one took envelopes to look the other way. The suit, he was more creative. He moved money where no one would see, and then asked how it had gotten there. He moved paperwork. He moved people. He liked to say he was a bridge. He was a flood." "What were their names?" I asked. Henry lifted his chin toward the corner. "You got a place we can go that ain't got ears?" We went to a cafe on Burgundy that had a porch with fans the size of helicopter blades. The waitress called everyone baby and meant it. When she brought the coffee, she hovered at the door like she was keeping watch. Henry didn't touch his. He put his hands flat on the table. They shook a little. The city rolled a note under everything bottomless and low. "The blue," he said. He was NOPD. I ain't say his name even to my mirror. He always wanted to be more. He was tired of guarding parades. He got greedy. He paid for a house 3 blocks off Bayou St. John with money from a glove compartment. He beat a man with a badge off the beat. Hurricane got him, or so they say. The suit, he wasn't New Orleans. He was Gulf Coast. Biloxi first, then he drifted to places that liked the smell of beach mixed with crime. He could smile and make you forget you had a wallet. Biloxi, I said. Henry's eyes found mine. He saw the way the word hit me. He didn't look away. What was his name? Naomi asked again, softer, like she was standing by a bed, about to pull back a sheet. Henry took a breath and like he was about to dive. Amberson, he said. Arthur, that's the suit. That's the one who told her he could hide her if she helped him. That's the one who gave her to the marshals with one hand and took favors with the other. That's the one who ended up in a small Mississippi town calling himself chief when what he was a man who knew where the bodies turned to paper. The fan above us made a sound like a question rubbing itself raw. Naomi blinked. I felt my hands find the edge of the table and hold on because I was floating. Amberson in Biloxi. Amberson at my mother's funeral, shaking my hand with watery eyes. Amberson leaving me a voicemail about the chaplain. He put her in Witsec, I said. The words came out gritted. He placed us. He orchestrated it, Henry said. There were good marshals. I don't put them in this pile. But he made sure she wouldn't ever testify in a way that touched him. He liked to be the first and last mouth at a table. Naomi whispered, "Oh, God." Henry looked old and not old. I told your mother not to trust him, he said. She said you can't pick your bridge when the river is rising. My phone buzzed. Amberson's name lit the screen. I showed Naomi. She nodded once. I let it ring until it would have been rude in any other life. Then I answered. Lang, he said, you down in the city? Yes, I said. You do me a favor and take your week. Don't trouble yourself about any of this hubbub. Mourning makes a man think he ought to start projects. That ain't the move. You hear me? I hear you, I said, and listened for his breath, for anything behind it, for the sound of a man sitting in a chair he paid too much for. You see Maya's piece? He asked. She's a good girl, but she gets excited. I saw. You stay off it, he said. Let this blow over. It'll be gossip by Friday. I'll do my best. Good. And Lang. He adopted the voice he used for press conferences and fish fries. If there's anything you need. I need to know if you knew my mother before Bayard, I said. Silence. A long one. A slow one. You can paint a room with a silence like that. I'm sorry for your loss, he said, and then he hung up. I set the phone on the table, like it was something I didn't trust not to bite me. You ready to look at the ledger now? Naomi asked. Her voice was pale but standing. We took it out, the book heavier in the sunlight than in the store shadow. We turned to the back third, where the handwriting got sharper, like she was writing with the point of a knife instead of a pen. There, on a page crowded with dates and sums and notes about drop under Claiborne at Columns, and Cortez moving trucks to Franklin, was a list titled, People Who Get to Say No. Under it, June, no. Miriam, no. Hen, maybe. Cortez, never. A. Amberson, never. If he comes with GOD nitrogen monoxide. Naomi wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist and laughed once, a startled bark. She really wrote it like that, she said. She knew him, I said, because the obvious sometimes saves you from floating off the planet. She knew him before. On the next page, a different list. Houses, locker numbers. A P.O. box, a church underlined twice St. Bernard and Claiborne, under the oaks. A block printed at the bottom that made the edges of my vision blur. If they find me, go to Pastor Hill. He will know how to bury what is left. Naomi stared. Pastor Hill. He will know how to bury what is left, I repeated. That better be a metaphor. We were quiet a long moment, listening to the cafe creak and the city hum and a distant saxophone practice scales like secrets. Then Naomi shut the book and slid it back under her shirt. "We need copies," she said. "And a plan," I said. "And a miracle," Henry said. We went to a FedEx with a broken air conditioner and a clerk who stamped each page like she was bussing bread. We made 2 sets of copies and left the original ledger in the tote this time, because nobody needed to see my sister undress a book again in a city that looks up when you lift your shirt. I hid 1 copy beneath the spare tire, another under a floorboard in June's shop, she insisted, eyes steady, mouth tight. By evening, the sky had slid down and wrapped itself around the city. We stood under the Claiborne overpass, where the oaks used to be, where concrete grew instead of leaves, where people set up grills and play cards and build worlds because you make space or space makes you. Heads turned when we walked in because we didn't belong, then turned back because the city teaches you to mind your own living. We found the column our mother had underlined, the one with the mural of a woman with hair like a river, eyes like a storm. Under it was a bench painted the color of an old album cover. I sat. Naomi stood. Henry leaned against the pillar like it was an old friend. "Your mother used to sing here," Henry said. Off-key as an apology, but loud. "Of course she did," Naomi said, and smiled for the first time since we buried her. "I called Jourdain." When she answered, her voice was somewhere between belief and tired. "You alive?" she asked. "For now," I said. "I got something for you," she said. Maya just posted an update. She's got a quote from an anonymous source, too, who says Alma Ward once testified in a sealed federal case. "People in town are buzzing. Chief is buzzing. You better put your bees in a box." "We found the ledger," I said. Silence, then careful. "You serious?" "As a vein," I said. "What's in it?" "Ink and heat," I said. "Amberson's name." Her breath came in on a whistle. "Lang," she said. "You can't bring that back here." "I have to," I said. "You don't," she said, fiercer. "You can take it to the marshals. You can take it to the feds. You can run it on Maya's front page. You bring that to Bayard. It's going to burn the town, and you with it." "I can't let him put his hands on it again," I said. "He'll set it on fire and call the smoke a miracle." Jordan sighed a swear word under her breath, then another. "Okay," she said finally. "If you're doing this, you don't sleep at your house. You don't drive the same road twice. You don't check your mirrors. You live in them." "We're in New Orleans," I said. "Mirrors are for other people. Then come back in daylight," she said. "And don't tell me when. If I don't know, I can't lie." "Jourdain," I said. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," she said. "Just don't make me write you up as dead." I hung up. The air under the overpass tasted like charcoal and pepper and oil. The ledger under my arm felt like a heartbeat I wasn't sure was mine. A woman walked up to us, then like she'd been expected. She had a scar that cut her upper lip thin and a braid down her back that spoke of a patient hand. Her eyes were the cautious kind. She looked at Naomi first, then at me. "You must be Lang and Naomi," she said. "Who are you?" I asked, reaching into my voice for something that sounded like careful. "Miriam," she said. "June called me. She said if I didn't come meet my ghosts, they were going to leave town without saying goodbye." She sat on the bench like she had a right to it. We stood because she made the air feel like south in August, and you stand for heat. "You knew our mother," Naomi said. "Everybody did," she said. "We risked a lot together. We lied to each other a good bit, too. That's what women do when we're trying to keep each other alive." "We have questions," I said. "I'll answer one," she said. "Not two. Not until I see which way the wind blows." Naomi pressed her lips together, then nodded. "Okay, one," she said. "Who is our father?" Miriam smiled like she'd waited for that. "He's not Henry," she said. She paused long enough for me to feel the insult, and then the relief wash over me like a foolish wave. He was a man who loved your mother when she thought love was a kind of trick. He wasn't a good man. He wasn't a bad man. He was the kind of man who believes he'll always have another chance to tell the truth, and then discovers he's out of chances. He died in Angola. That's the truth you think you want. The truth you actually want is that he had your eyes, Lang, and Naomi, he had your laugh. She shrugged. You get to keep both without owing him anything. Naomi closed her eyes. I swallowed hard enough to hurt. My question, I said after a moment. What's the safest way to bring a ledger full of names into a town run by a man who doesn't like his name on paper? Miriam's gaze turned from human to weather. There isn't one, she said, but there is a less stupid way. You don't carry the whole thing. You carry copies of the pages you plan to use. You scatter the rest. Church ladies, Little League coaches, the lady at the DMV who hates everybody equally. You make 100 lanterns, and you throw them all into the river at once. A man like Amberson can stamp out 1 candle. He can blow out 3. He can't make it dark if all the lights go up at once. She leaned forward. And you don't let him know you're coming until you're already at his table. You think he'll try to hurt us? Naomi asked. Miriam studied my sister's face, then mine. He'll try to convince you you're tired, she said. He'll make you feel like the truth is too heavy to carry. He'll smile at you like he's your auntie's favorite deacon and ask you to pray on it. And if that fails, he will find someone who loves you and make them cry. She stood. So you go in with proof in a crowd, but you don't go in alone. She looked at Henry. You still got the number? She asked. He nodded once, clipped. I do. Then call them, she said. You tell them there's a ledger. You tell them a police chief they thought retired with honor has a page. You tell them 2 children are about to walk into a fire. You tell them if they let a second Tremaine happen, I'm going to drag their names through every ward like laundry. Henry took out his phone, big and careful in his hand. He scrolled to a number with no name and pressed it. It rang long enough to make me think the world was going to keep being what it had been. Then someone picked up. This is assist. U.S. Attorney Kell. A man said, clipped, bored like he was ordering coffee. This is Baptiste, Henry said. From the Dalacroix case. You remember me? A pause. I do, Kell said. You're supposed to have died twice. Not today, Henry said. Listen, we got circumstances. We got a ledger. We got a chief of police in Mississippi who liked money more than he liked sleep. The voice on the phone changed temperatures. You're sure? I'm sure, Henry said. Where are you? New Orleans, but we ain't staying. I can meet you, Kell said. Tonight. No, Miriam said, loud enough for the phone to hear. You meet us in Bayard, where the mess got moved. Under the water tower behind the high school, where Alma taught children to sound out their own names. Silence. Then, Mom, that's not. You don't get to pick convenience anymore, Miriam said. We did that for you for 20 years. A long inhale came through the speaker. Tomorrow, Kell said. Noon, I'll bring a marshal. We'll bring a crowd, Miriam said. Henry ended the call. We stood a while, listening to the hum of the city, the overpass making its own storm ceiling above our heads. When we turned to go, a shadow stepped out from the column. He wore a suit that looked like it would rather be in air conditioning and a tie the color of sincerity. He was not sweating. That's how I knew he was federal before he opened his mouth. You must be Langston Ward, he said. I must be, I said. He didn't offer a hand. Marshal Qualls, he said. Ellen. The name was a girl's in a woman's mouth, and the jaw it sat on was not here to be liked. She showed her badge because some badges want to be seen in daylight. You're early, Henry said, more grateful than he wanted to be. I was already on a case, Qualls said. Got a call from Kell. He told me to find you, so I did. You tracking our phones? I asked. Everybody tracks everybody, she said. I track the heat. You three leave a lot of it. She looked at the ledger under Naomi's arm and didn't even pretend she wasn't reading the outline of it with her eyes. I'm not here to take that. I'm here to tell you the same thing I told Kel. If you go back to Bayard, you don't go to your house. You don't answer calls you can't swear to. You don't go anywhere without people. You a marshal, Miriam said. Protect something. Qualls' jaw tightened and then relaxed. I'm going to try, she said. But I'm one person with a badge and a tank of gas. Men like Amberson, if he is what you say, he's a network. You better make yourself one too. She handed me a card with a number that didn't look like it wanted to be saved in a phone. If he contacts you, record it, she said. If he asks to meet, say yes and tell me 10 minutes before you arrive. If anyone follows you, drive to a church or a hospital and start yelling names. Don't try to be a hero. Heroes get plaques. Survivors get to watch grandchildren graduate. She started to leave, then turned back. Your mother saved more people than she hurt, she said. That's not how we keep the score, but it's not nothing. Naomi nodded, eyes hot. Then help us finish it. Qualls looked at the sky, as if weighing whether she could bargain with it. Tomorrow noon, she said. Bring copies, not the whole thing. And bring witnesses. Henry waited until she walked away and disappeared into a car that didn't look federal until it moved. Then he blew out a breath that had been held since 2001. You ready to go home? He asked. Not home, I said. Bayard? Same thing, Naomi said. Whether we like it or not. We drove back to our motel on Aretha Castle Haley because June said it was where we could catch our breath. At the desk, the woman with rhinestone glasses looked at us over the rim like we were a song she half remembered. You need extra towels? She asked, and it was the kindest question anyone had asked me in a week. In the room, Naomi spread the copies of the ledger on the bed like tarot cards. We marked the pages we'd carry. We packed the rest in 3 separate envelopes, addressed them to Maya, to Jordan, to Pastor Hill. Naomi wrote a note to each with the careful handwriting of a woman who had graded papers late into the night. If something happens to us, this is why. At 2 a.m, my phone lit up on the table, vibrating across the wood like a bug. Unknown number. Don't, Naomi said. I answered. Lang, a voice said. Male. Soft. The softness of a hand that has broken noses. This is Chief Amberson. You blocked your number, I said. Habit, he said. I hear you're making a lot of noise for a man who just lost his mama. She wasn't just anything, I said. Names are like that, he said. They belong to more than one person. Listen. He did the sigh he did when he wanted to seem reluctantly kind. I told you to take your time. You come back here with whatever you think you got, and you're going to start a fire in people's living rooms. You know how small this town is? You know how rumors put folks on each other. You don't want that, son. You had history with my mother, I said. Silence. Then, we all have history with somebody, he said. You bring that book here. You're going to make it history for everybody. Is that a threat? It's a fact. I kept my voice level. Tomorrow noon, I said. Under the water tower. I already have it on my calendar, he said. Be a shame if you were late. He hung up. Naomi watched my face. We still going? She asked. We are, I said. She nodded. Lay back on the bedspread with her arms flung over her head, ledger pages framing her face like a crown. You scared? She asked the ceiling. Yes, I said, honest. Me too, she said. Good. Means we're paying attention. I sat in the motel chair with my mother's cassette on the table in front of me. I pressed play. Her voice filled the small room and the space in my chest the house had left hollow. If you got this far, she said, be gentle with the parts of me I didn't know how to give you. I hit stop and put my head in my hands. Outside, down on the street, a car idled too long and then left. Somewhere, a dog barked at a thing only dogs and men with work left undone can hear. My phone vibrated again, Maya, this time. Call me urgent. I typed, tomorrow. Water tower. Bring a crowd. Her reply came back a beat later. Always. I stood and checked the lock, then set a chair under the knob, because movies don't do that for no reason. Naomi was already half asleep, breath dragging like a tired song. I turned the lights off and let the city's neon smear the walls. Morning would come with heat and answers that would bring more questions. Noon would come with a water tower and a crowd and a man who wouldn't sweat. We would walk into sunlight carrying paper heavy with names and try not to drown. I sat in the glow, stared at the ceiling texture like a map, and whispered a thing I am not proud of. Mama, help us. The air didn't change. The room didn't shift. But somewhere deep, something steadied like a hand on a small back, and I slept. The Bayard water tower rose over the high school like a giant listening ear, pale blue paint flaking in the August sun. Beneath it, the dirt was hard and cracked, grass stubborn in patches. From a distance, you'd think nothing important had ever happened here. Up close, it was a meeting place. Teenagers smoking after games, church groups praying before road trips, deals whispered in the dark. By 11:45, a small knot of people stood under its shadow. Jordan was there, hands in her pockets, sunglasses reflecting the glare. Pastor Hill, in a short-sleeved shirt, Bible tucked under his arm like a second rib. Maya with her phone in one hand, and a mic clipped to her blouse, hair catching the light. June and Miriam stood together, a united front in braids and gold hoops. Even Mr. Leon from across the street in New Orleans had made the drive, leaning on a cane he probably didn't need, wearing a hat that read, "Let's discuss this over gumbo." Henry stood near the edge of the group, scanning the road with a look that could strip paint. Naomi and I parked the Impala in the gravel lot. The ledger's copies were in a manila envelope, pages we'd marked in red pen. The original stayed locked in June's shop, duct-taped in plastic like a heart waiting for surgery. Qualls pulled up 5 minutes later in a dusty sedan that didn't look federal until she stepped out with that square stance Marshall's, it from too many standoffs. Cal got out from the passenger side, dark suit in the Mississippi heat, face pale but eyes sharp. He shook my hand like he was trying to test grip strength and loyalty at once. "Mr. Ward, Miss Ward," Cal said. "Thank you for meeting us." Before I could answer, a white SUV with tinted windows rolled in slow, tires crunching gravel like it was enjoying it. The driver's door opened, and Chief Arthur Amberson stepped out wearing khakis, a pale green dress shirt, and a smile that had gotten him handshakes in every church in town. "Langston," he said warmly, like we were catching up at a fish fry. "Naomi, didn't think you'd bring the whole county." "Some stories deserve witnesses," I said. He chuckled low, eyes darting to Maya's camera, then to the marshal's. "Guess this is official, then." Qualls stepped forward. "Chief Amberson, we're here to discuss allegations." "No, you're here because 2 grieving children don't know what they've stumbled into." Amberson cut in, still smiling, voice smooth as rain on tin. "Let's not pretend otherwise." Naomi moved beside me, the envelope in her hands. "We know exactly what we've stumbled into," she said. "And we're not children." Amberson's gaze landed on her with that politician's mix of admiration and threat. "Your mama wouldn't want you dragged into this mess." "My mama didn't want Tremaine Dorsey dead either," Naomi said. The smile cracked. For just a second, his jaw tightened. Then the mask slid back. "You think you know the story." "I know you were there before Bayard," I said. I know you were the suit in her file. I know you put her into Witsec and kept your hands clean while everyone else burned. That's a hell of a claim, Emerson said lightly, though a drop of sweat slid down from his hairline. Kel opened his briefcase and laid out the copies of the ledger on the hood of Qualls's car. Your name appears here, Kel said, multiple times. In relation to cash drops, property transfers, obstruction of federal witnesses. Alleged, Emerson said. You got proof beyond the scrawl of a woman who made her living telling stories to third graders? Naomi stepped forward. That scrawl matches sworn statements, receipts, photographs. We've got voices on tape. We've got June. We've got Miriam. And we've got the kind of people you can't buy off anymore because they're tired of being scared. Emerson's eyes cut to the crowd, maybe hoping for doubt. But Jordan's jaw was tight. Maya's camera was steady. Pastor Hill's eyes were fixed in that way. Preachers get when they've decided whose side God's on. You really want to do this here? Emerson asked me, low, almost gentle. In your town? You think people will thank you? You think they'll vote for you for anything after this? I don't care if they thank me, I said. I care that they know who you are. For the first time, the smile slid all the way off. You have no idea how dangerous this is, he said. That's the first true thing you've said today, I told him. Qualls stepped between us, her voice iron. Chief Emerson, you're under federal investigation. You can leave here with us voluntarily, or we can call a marked unit to make it less polite. His eyes narrowed, weighing the optics. Then he smirked, a shadow of the old mask, and raised his hand slightly. Let's keep it polite. Qualls moved in, reading him his rights as Kel gathered the papers. The crowd stayed silent, watching a man who'd run the town walk toward a car like it was just another errand. When the SUV pulled away, the air seemed to loosen. Maya lowered her camera, eyes bright with the high of truth caught on tape. Jordan gave me a nod that felt heavier than words. Henry walked up, hand on my shoulder. She'd be proud, he said. She'd be mad, I said. We're not safe yet. No, he agreed. But you're standing. That's something. Pastor Hill came over, looking at me like I was 8 years old again in Sunday school. Your mother told me once that the truth was like planting pecans. You might not be around to eat them, but you plant anyway. Naomi slipped her arm through mine. We planted today, she said. The days after were slow and fast at once. Emerson's arrest made the local news, then the state papers. Then one evening we saw his face on a national feed, the anchor talking about a small-town police chief implicated in a decades-old organized theft case. Maya's story ran with photos of our mother, both as Alma and as Lark. The comments were split, but more people stood with her than against. Jordan kept her patrol car parked across from my house for a week straight. The marshals took copies of the ledger and promised to follow up. June and Miriam went back to their lives, though I knew neither of them would sleep easy for a while. Henry headed back to New Orleans, but not before leaving me a note that said simply, You know where to find me. Naomi and I sat on our mother's porch one evening as the cicadas started their slow, hot chorus. The azaleas were blooming late, stubborn against the season. What now? She asked. We keep going, I said. We see what grows. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Think she's watching? I thought about the cassette, her voice in that motel room, the way she'd said love is not a lie just because it had to be quiet. Yeah, I said, and I think she's laughing. The sun dropped low, and the air cooled just enough to make you believe in the next day. We sat there until the streetlights came on, 2 names in a town that would never see us quite the same again, holding on to the truth we dragged into the open, and to each other. And somewhere far off, under another blue porch ceiling or beside another humming cooler, the rest of the past waited. But for now, we'd planted, and that was enough. Not every story ends with justice. Some just stop where the paperwork does. But if you listened closely, this wasn't just about what happened. It was about what we ignore, the assumptions we let slide, the voices we tune out because they don't come in the right tone. Somewhere, someone's living with the fallout of this story, not as a headline, but as their everyday. So if this story stayed with you, don't let it fade. Shine it forward. Ask more. Doubt what's too quiet. Because what we choose to see or not see decides what happens next. Like, comment, share, not for clicks, but for clarity. Because awareness is how silence breaks and how truth finds daylight.